With the Habs having played 2 of their prospect challenge games, some of their prospects stood out, but there's a lot left to be desired, and we're going to be talking about whether or not it might be time to worry about some Habs prospects on this edition of Habs Digest. But before we get into that, Jesse, we got to first talk a bit about a little stat that we saw on Twitter today, and it's that the Habs are tied for the 3rd youngest NHL team, and hey, this is excluding a lot of these prospect guys. This is the youngest team's, at least projected, starting lineups on the opening night of the season this year. And according to cap-friendly depth charts, here's the youngest average ages of these starting lineups. Columbus at 25.5, Arizona 25.7, but you can see Buffalo, Montreal, and New Jersey all tied at 25.9 years of age. And I feel super confident seeing this stat, considering that Montreal's future is locked up in Suzuki and Caufield. We have some incredible defensive prospects and some very solid goalie prospects that we're definitely going to get into a little bit in a minute. But yeah, to see this on paper, I mean, we kind of knew, we had that feeling that the Habs were quite young, but to see him be that low and to have this much talent, it's kind of a good feeling.
It is, yeah, and it's nice to see that our starting lineup is actually so young and while still having one of the best prospect pools in the entire NHL, because we see a lot of those 2 other teams that are near the top of that is the Columbus Blue Jackets and then the Buffalo Sabres. So again, young teams, but then having those great prospects as well. So just youth and then obviously so much to look forward to. So obviously, this is part of the rebuild. This is what we wanted to do. It was very intentional. And I think it's just been great work from Kent Hughes just to kind of, infuse the youth movement and everything else and have that young core grow together.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's some teams there that stand out. Like Buffalo already has Tage Thompson, who looks amazing. Habs have Caufield and Suzuki. The Devils kind of stand out. They're kind of crazy, but again, their prospect pool maybe isn't as good as Montreal. And remember, Montreal is ranked right at the top of these prospect pool rankings. So not only is their actual roster really good, they have one of the best prospect pools in the NHL. And that's where we got to talk about these prospect challenge games, Jesse. And let's get into the good first. Some prospects have really stood out in these couple games, and we're going to start with David Reinbacher. Now, did he necessarily stand out and show that, like, oh my goodness, he is crazy better than everyone? No. However, even though they say here, Mark Dumont says he was a tentative brand of hockey, for me, to see him feel so comfortable playing a solid, quiet game, just making the right passes, handling the pressure, which is something that we've all heard he could do incredibly well, I just feel like almost not standing out in a bad way is exactly what we wanted to see from Mr. Reinbacher.
That's often when you're doing your job well as a defender, that can often be the case. But one thing I did like from David Reinbacher's game offensively is his ability to get pucks to the net. And as we know, when you're shooting from the point, that's not always the easiest thing. You got a lot of traffic. It's very important to make those opportunities count, right? So that is one thing that I've seen him be able to do. I'm glad that, he's not reluctant to take those shots, to take those opportunities as well when they come his way.
Yeah, I mean, we saw last year, like Arber Xhekaj randomly had a talent for that as well. And hey, guess it paid off for him. And yeah, David Reinbacher just, again, making the right plays more often than not. Like almost no mistakes, just looking very solid, calm, composed. He looked like he was just having his way out there almost without showing off too much. But we'll move on from him because he's the one everyone wants to talk about. But let's talk about one of their best forwards. In fact, probably their best forward. Now, while Owen Beck didn't play versus the Bruins today, he had a great game versus the Sabres team with Emil Heineman and Joshua Roy on his wings. Beck had 2 assists, but the big thing was that he was back checking a ton, Jesse. And again, he was dominant on the face-off dot. Owen Beck takes face-offs with both hands, right? He holds it left and right when he's taking face-offs. And I don't think it's a stretch to say he's been the best Habs forward through these 2 games. And for me, probably their most promising forward prospect.
That's it. Well, we didn't get to see him in Boston, against Boston, in Buffalo.
Right.
But yeah, no, definitely. Like one of the things that like stood out for me like a lot was just like his sneaky stick handling abilities. Like he was making moves. He had the ability to really make defenders kind of miss. And that wasn't something I was expecting from as much. But again, really nice to see from him. Obviously we expect him to be a really smart player. He's coming in with a little bit more experience maybe than some other players, at least just a little bit, right? So kind of show him that as well. So, I'm definitely happy with what we've seen from him so far.
Yeah, he's looked, again, calm and cool and collected and has been making the right plays, great passes, great defense. Kind of exactly what we had him billed as, right? A very solid player that's going to make very few mistakes, 200-foot guy, and he's been showing up pretty well. And Joshua Roy, his line mate, also had a very solid 2 games, Jesse. Two points in 2 games. I mean, what was your thought on Joshua Roy's performance in these last 2 days?
Well, first of all, his size really stands out on the ice. People are saying he doesn't look too slow up there.
He
But
doesn't.
also what I really like is just his ability to win some puck battles
Yeah.
along the boards and everything else. So he was one of the players that really stood out, I think, for a lot of people tonight, including Quentin Miller, who made
Oh
some
yeah.
really nice glove save and everything else like that. So there is some people saying, Joshua White, 2 points in 2 games. Does he have a chance to really make this team, right? Which I think, he's putting himself in a good position so far. Obviously this is still, prospect camp. I think when we're looking at all the players, we need to understand that it's so hard sometimes when you don't necessarily have that chemistry of playing with your players all the time to really evaluate properly. But essentially, I really feel like, kind of going ahead, we're going to have a much better read on these players.
Yeah, for sure. And also shout out to William Trudeau, who looked really solid as David Reinbacher's defense partner in that first game. And also Jakub Dobesh. Both goalie prospects looked very good. But Jesse, your point about, having different line mates, that kind of transitions. We're going to transition, even though this first player we're going to talk about, maybe not so much time to worry, but boy, after that first Buffalo game, some Habs fans where I saw a lot of takes saying, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And that's about Logan Mailloux. Now, this was talking about the first game. It was Logan Mailloux and Christopher Ortiz, and they had a hard time keeping players to the outside. The defense was not very good. They were allowing the Sabres to get into every single place they wanted to. Mailloux didn't hustle to attempt to corral a loose puck. It led to a Sabres goal. He made a lot of bad outlet passes. It felt like he was trying to do too much, and we said, like, he's going to go in there with something to prove with Reinbacher ahead of him. But I think he tried a bit too hard and sometimes got a bit lazy on the defensive end, wasn't fully into it, maybe psyched him out, had a bad first game. But today he was paired with Jayden Struble instead, and that could very well be a pairing in Laval this year, Jesse. And I thought he looked phenomenal today. Way better. His fast skating, he was making way fewer mistakes. He had a breakaway. Again, do you think you can expand on like maybe why that Ortiz pairing wasn't great, or at least like how people should probably not be making these hot takes about players after just one game, because Mailloux like went from zero to hero overnight.
Yeah, again, right? You're playing with, it's so hard to develop this chemistry. So many of these players have never played together before. And my kind of takeaway of why he probably had a better game tonight with paired with Jayden Struble is that Jayden Struble is more of a defenseman,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously allows Logan Mailloux the ability to skate, which is really the strong point of his game, is to really kind of adventure, kind of, get into that offensive zone a little bit more, knowing that he has a little bit more of that anchor there with him. Obviously, Jayden Struble is maybe a little bit more of a touted prospect as well than Ortiz. But I think just more his style of hockey that he plays really complements Logan Mailloux a lot more. And I think that that's something that the coaching staff should be looking for in the future to really bring out the best in Logan Mailloux.
100% agree. Now, I will say his lack of awareness on defense is still a little bit concerning, but that was something we knew was going to be a problem coming into this season, and you got to think the coaches are going to work with him on that, and that's not hopefully going to be a long-term issue. But I wanted to talk a bit about the forwards, because we said the goalies were solid, defensemen were pretty good overall, but I'm seeing a lot of people say this, and I tend to agree, Jesse. Montreal just doesn't seem to have a star forward in the pipeline. I wanted to get your opinion on this because Beck looked like the best forward, but again, he's pegged as like kind of a middle six guy. Joshua Waugh looked good, has a chance to make the team, but like other guys like Riley Kidney and Philip Méchard, who for the second straight year are just not, or they're unable to stand out amongst the crowd. Do you think it might be time to worry that the Habs just might not get that top end talent at forward for another while to come?
Well, I think it depends on what we define as the pipeline for the future. I think, speaking to possibly the pipeline as you're referring it to, I think that Emil Heineman looked good in spurts. He
Mm-hmm.
showed some good speed at certain places, which skating and speed is one of the things that's going to make you stand out the most in these type of games. Of course, it's not everything. You need to put it together when you put yourself in good opportunities and you need to be able to finish. But obviously being quick and skating is a great asset to have in today's NHL. He's had that. We just, we're hoping to just see a little bit more from him from that. The reason why I'm not worried, and people might say, oh, but we don't have the top end prospects, is I would argue that, players like Juraj Slafkovsky could very easily be playing in a tournament like this, right?
True.
Like, we do have those star guys. I think those first, at worst case, second line, very good players in the organization. Whether you look at our core already of Nick Suzuki, of Cole Caufield, Kirby Dach, Alex Newhook, the list goes on. They're all very young, right? So while they're not prospects, they're still very young and very talented and still, going to have a very bright future. So I think with Juraj Slafkovsky, obviously he fits a need that we have for offense. Obviously, that's not an absolute at this point, but I think, it'd be foolish to rule him out. And then, so I think on defense, Reinbacher is that, can definitely be that first pairing type of guy as well, which is when you're looking for those top spots, whether it's on the first or second line or first pairing kind of defense, it's like there's only so many of those. And that's why from there, you then fill it out with depth. And why, like with prospects, it's often, it's so hard to tell of who's going to pan out. Sometimes late draft picks end up being great. Sometimes first round draft picks aren't the best. It's really, you got to kind of really expect the unexpected, which is why you try to get as many as you can, because you just never know what's going to happen. You don't want to rule out any player, but nothing is a given, right? Nothing is for sure when it comes to this until they've really made that debut. And even then it's hard to really make in the NHL. So all this is proving, to really how hard that is. But, I think that being said, that's why we've gotten so many prospects. That's why I'm not worried about our prospects pool and that high-end talent.
Yeah, you know what? I think you might have convinced me. Like, that's a very reasonable take. And actually, your first sentence is a great point. Like, what if Slafkovsky didn't play in the NHL this year? He'd be in this tournament. What if Lane Hutson wasn't an NCAA prospect? He would be in this tournament. And they might be looking like the two best guys on the ice. I still have my reservations about, because I know you said, the depth of the prospect pool is awesome. And it's very true. It's a numbers game, right? Because you got to think with so many prospects with potential that they might eventually break through. But yeah, it's a numbers game. It's very interesting to see. I still have my reservations about guys like Kidney and Mayshar, but at least Beck looks good. And let us know in the comments down below. What do you think? Is it time to worry about the Habs' top-end talent in the prospects pool? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000 subs, and we really appreciate your support. I'm Josh Gosse for my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.